all aware of this phenomenon, the so-called fresh WoW hype, and now the more recent Classic Plus hype. And odds are, you're going through one of these phases right now. The fresh WoW phase is a very unique and widely recognized cultural experience in the gaming community. There are YouTube videos about it, surveys about it, and even memes about it. And more recently, we've seen the rise of Classic Plus hype. Everyone is talking about it everywhere. But what most of us don't seem to understand is, why? Why do we have this fresh WoW or Classic Plus hype? And why does it keep coming back after all these years? Why do so many people in our generation experience this? Well, to answer this question, we have to go back in time a little bit. Back to a time before Fresh or Classic Plus was even a thing. Back to our first introduction to this game we all love. And for me, that time was 2005. I remember this all like it was yesterday. It was June, summer vacation had just started, and a friend of mine had recently introduced me to this massive new MMORPG. Of course, I had to play at his house because the only computer I had at home was a family Dell that would struggle to play RuneScape on a browser. I would create a character, usually a Night Elf Hunter, spawn into Teldrassil, and just run around killing mobs for hours, and then have to head home for dinner. I'm pretty sure I never got past level 5, but it was enough to get me absolutely hooked. So I did what every kid did back then, and used any birthday money I'd saved and sold some stuff and built a really cheap, really crappy gaming PC to play WoW on at home. My gaming setup was a keyboard, a mouse, a monitor, and speakers all sitting on top of a tiny snack table because I didn't have room for a desk in my room. But I made it work and booted up the game for the first time in my own room. The sights, the sounds, and the players running around chatting with each other immediately drew me into the game, giving me a sense of immersion that I had just never felt before. And from that moment on, I don't think I ever stopped playing World of Warcraft. And of course, why would I? The game was and is genius. It's basically a giant world that never stopped moving, even after you logged off. You got to create your character, level up to get stronger, and explore a world that felt so massive and endless. At that time, you would never run out of things to do or places to explore. In 2007, we received our first expansion, The Burning Crusade, and then in 2008, we got the second expansion, Wrath of the Lich King. It was honestly as close to perfect as it gets. But no matter how perfect it was, by the end of 2010, there was a new game on the block that had caught my eye.
Talara has always been threatened by forces beyond the Ward.
No, I'm kidding. Rift was great for a solid few hours, but it was no WoW killer like everyone said. Look, the point is, WoW started to get a little bit boring, just like any game that you play for so long would. So one day, without even realizing it, I logged out of WoW for the last time. Until August of 2019, when my first ever fresh WoW experience would begin. Oh my god, that guy was walking free for so long. 7,000 Q? My god, dude. Even though this was first of many fresh WoW experiences, it turned out it was just as amazing as it was back in 2005. Maybe even a little bit better. The first 12 months or so was fun and exciting, but around the 13-month marker, it really all started to fade away. And as many of us will attest to this, it just wasn't the same as it once was. This fresh WoW carried on into a re-release of the Burning Crusade Classic, Wrath of the Lich King Classic, and now even Cataclysm Classic 5 years after Classic launched in 2019. And now that I think of it, prior to starting this YouTube channel, I don't think I've ever played WoW for this long without taking breaks in between. Most of my history with World of Warcraft since around 2010 was to just come back for the beginning or the end of new expansions, play for around 6 months or so, and then take a break and go play other games. This went on for quite a long time, since in Modern WoW we're currently on our 10th expansion, The War Within. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that usually that initial hype lasts anywhere from 2 to 6 months for most players, and this is for many reasons, but there's one that stands out to me the most, and it's one that I didn't expect.
All right, so Gribble's going to be getting X out.
You can just switch over sides over here if you want, Gribble.
Yeah, that might be
Since
better.
you're over here.
Yeah, let's just do that.
We all know that feeling. The feeling of a fresh WoW launch, or a new classic expansion, where you decide this time, I'm going to take my time and enjoy the game. I'm not going to rush to endgame and speed through all the content as fast as possible. I'm going to take my time leveling up and exploring this beautiful world. But sadly for most players, this doesn't end up happening. You and a group of friends start playing on day one, maybe you join a guild, and then all of a sudden you find yourself competing with everyone else leveling alongside you. Severe FOMO sets in, and you don't want to be left in the dust. So you start what I like to call the rush. You rush as fast as you can to endgame, you rush as fast as you can to farm your pre-raid bisc gear, you rush until there's nothing left to do but log out until next raid night. I can't speak for everyone, and I know there's tons of players out there that don't play like this, but sadly, for a lot of the player base, this is how it plays out. Now after a few weeks in, or maybe a month or so, you've done all the available content, and you find yourself raid logging until the next week. But honestly, as most of you already know, WoW was not designed to be played this way. It was designed with the idea of the world, Azeroth, being the main character, not you. You're supposed to take your time exploring and questing, playing around with some of your wacky talents that make absolutely no sense, and ultimately just getting immersed in this massive world. It was designed to be played at a much slower pace so that you can explore the vast biomes scattered all around the world. It was designed to be played alongside other players or your friends, clearing dungeons, and even traveling all around the world to obtain the quests for that specific dungeon. Now don't get me wrong, we all love watching Noda speedrun the world first raid clears. It's part of the classic culture at this point. But some of the most fun I've ever had in WoW were when I was much, much younger, and I didn't really fully understand how to play the game fast. Some of those experiences and memories that I made back then still stand out to me today. I didn't use crazy add-ons or set myself insanely aggressive goals. I just played the game at its natural pace and enjoyed it every step of the way. Now I'm not here to say that there's a right or wrong way to play the game. Everyone can play the game however they want. I'm just saying that if you truly want to play the game and have the hype last a little bit longer than just a few months, or even a few weeks in some situations, just challenge yourself to not play like a world-first speedrunner. Because the reality of it is, for most people, it's just less fun to play like that. I'm guilty of it as well. FOMO hits me super hard and I end up blasting all the content as fast as I can. But the thing is, people who play this way most of the time are doing it because it's their job. So unless you're a classic WoW YouTuber or a streamer, why rush? Let the creators rush to complete everything and get their content out while you sit back and just enjoy the ride. Look, we all know the reason that slightly older folks like myself go back and play classic WoW. It's to re-experience that feeling of getting home from school or your job at the grocery store and hopping on WoW with your friends. For me, this was back in 2005, and it went on for years. I would constantly create new characters on both sides, Horde and Alliance, get them to around level 20-ish, and then just make a new one. I didn't even think I hit level cap for the first time until right before Burning Crusade dropped, but it didn't matter. I was having the most fun that I think I've ever had in WoW, and I know that I'm not alone in this. So many people experienced WoW in a similar way back then. So having established this, let's think about it. I played back in 2005, and I'm 32 now. And I would say that on average, for classic WoW players, you're most likely between the ages of 25 and 45. Most of us have so many more responsibilities than we had back then in those younger days when we initially started playing, and most of our old squads that we played with are either broken up or not gaming as much anymore. And that's just due to life progressing. But for a brief moment, a few weeks or even months, we get to relive that magic. We get to jump in and try and recreate that feeling that we had when we were younger. And for a lot of us, it works. The only issue is that it doesn't last forever. And once reality sets in that you need to put in some serious time to get to that endgame goal, a lot of people tend to burn out or just log off until the next round of hype comes along. And this really is okay in my opinion. Sure, there's a lot of us like myself who end up playing the whole way through, but I would argue that at least half the player base that starts on day one of a fresh hype no longer are playing by month 2, maybe even earlier. This is just the cycle of how Fresh WoW Classic works, and I honestly think it will continue to work like this indefinitely. Almost every WoW player gets the itch to play WoW again once they've stepped away for a break. And things like Fresh or Classic Plus will be perfect to scratch that itch. We're experiencing it right now if you think about it. We're about 10 months deep into Season of Discovery currently. It's still going pretty strong, but the hype is nowhere near as high as it was for the first 4 months. People have decided to take breaks, go back to hardcore, check out the new retail expansion, or maybe even quit entirely for the time being. And currently, since I was able to get that soft confirmation for a Classic Plus coming in the future from the devs, there has been non-stop talk about it. And this is how the cycle continues.
First BlizzCon.
What's your first impression?
A lot of nerds.
I think for the first time, we really felt like we were part of something much bigger.
World of Warcraft, or WoW, is not just a game, it's a journey. Since its launch in 2004, this iconic MMORPG has shaped an entire generation of gamers. But over the last 2 decades, WoW players' mentality has changed in profound ways, from exploring a vast, mysterious world to seeking efficiency and optimization. The community's outlook has evolved alongside the game itself. So let's take a look back at how WoW gamers have changed from 2004 to 2024. In 2004, WoW launched with a bang. For many players, this was their first MMORPG experience. Gamers in these early days had a sense of awe and wonder. Azeroth was a massive, unexplored world, and the community was filled with people who were more interested in adventure and discovery than efficiency. Back then, the idea of min-maxing was a foreign concept to most. People spent hours just exploring the environment, discovering hidden quests, and immersing themselves in the lore. Raids like Molten Core and Onyxia's Lair were less about technical performance and more about the sheer joy of gathering 40 people and tackling massive bosses together. It was chaotic and unrefined, but that's what made it special. Players didn't know all the mechanics beforehand, and that element of surprise and experimentation made every encounter feel rewarding.
Oh, here comes the pain, bitch!
The mentality was social. Players spent countless hours in towns or hanging out in guilds, where the focus was on community rather than competition. Being a casual player was the norm, and hardcore players were considered outliers rather than the standard. As WoW's player base expanded with the Burning Crusade in 2007 and Wrath of the Lich King in 2008, so did the approach to gameplay. New content meant new challenges, and the community started to shift towards a more goal-oriented mindset. The introduction of arena PvP, heroic dungeons, and more complex raids began fostering a divide between casual and hardcore players. Guilds started becoming more competitive, pushing for server firsts and raid content, and this era gave birth to progression raiding, where players were no longer satisfied just clearing the content. They wanted to clear it first, faster, and more efficiently. Websites like Wowhead and Elitist Jerks began to pop up, providing in-depth guides and discussions on the best gear, talent builds, and optimal strategies. The rise of third-party resources helped players approach the game with more information, but it also introduced the mentality of min-maxing. The community still retained its social focus, but there was a growing emphasis on performance. The mentality was slowly shifting towards mastery of the game, and being good at WoW became a badge of honor. With Cataclysm in 2010 and Mist of Pandaria in 2012, the WoW community began to undergo a transformation. The introduction of features like Dungeon Finder, Raid Finder, and Cross-Realm Zones made grouping with other players easier, but it also had unintended consequences. The need to form tight-knit guilds or even talk to other players diminished. This was the start of WoW's shift from a game built on social interaction to one where convenience took precedence. Players no longer needed to network or invest in long-term relationships to experience high-level content. It was a double-edged sword. For some, it opened doors to parts of the game they'd never seen before. For others, it eroded the strong bonds and teamwork that were once crucial to success. The mentality of "I can do it alone" became prevalent. While there were still dedicated guilds and social hubs, the overall focus shifted towards efficiency and convenience. Less time spent forming groups meant more time spent grinding for rewards.
He can't believe that they've lost. They've come so far from the lower bracket. They almost claimed victory. They tied it up at one apiece. He is going to run away, and in comes the final abilities, the final kills that they need, despite having to fight against a very resilient Orange Marmalade.
We know what happens next. There's the Wolf and Bloodlust on Benruki, drops down to half. Wow, and down goes Benruki. I don't know if possible. He landed up with it. Benruki's at 80K. He's alive. We're all alive. And Tinu pulls off the miracle. Are you kidding me? They are all alive.
Here comes the man of Armistead. They're looking at the pack. Found the Tinu Sumo. There's nothing left for 9 more seconds. Down at 10%. Trying to get away from the encore. Close to 5%. They're in 5%. No way.
Big swap on Rooney though, pistol's done into cheek, ground into gas, and they take him down! What was that different game? Winning gouge coming in from WoW's, denying anything from Looney. That was absolutely insane.
By the time Warlords of Draenor and Legion rolled around, WoW had fully embraced competitive gaming. Mythic raids, timed dungeons, and even esports like the Mythic Dungeon Invitational and Arena World Championship became key features of the game. For many players, WoW had become a competitive pursuit, not just a casual pastime. The introduction of Mythic Plus dungeons in Legion was a game changer. It created a new endgame experience for players who thrived on improving their times and perfecting their strategies. Add-ons and third-party tools like Warcraft logs became essential, allowing players to analyze and optimize every aspect of their gameplay. The mentality had shifted once again. Now it wasn't just about doing well, it was about doing perfectly. For many in the community, WoW had evolved into a sport. The divide between casual and hardcore players widened even more, with some feeling left behind by the sheer complexity and demands of the modern endgame. In recent years, WoW's developers had made efforts to recapture some of the magic that made the early games special. Shadowlands and Dragonflight brought renewed focus on storytelling, exploration, and player choice. Yet the community's mentality remained rooted in efficiency and optimization. WoW Classic, released in 2019, also played a key role in reigniting the original mentality of exploration and community. For some, Classic WoW was a return to form. However, even within Classic, the modern WoW mentality seeped in. In 2024, WoW's latest expansion, The War Within, has brought a fresh twist to both the game and its community. After 2 decades of external conflicts, invasions, and world-ending threats, The War Within turns the focus inward, both narratively and for the player base. The expansion explores the internal struggles of Azeroth's heroes and the concept of inner conflict within the factions. The community's response has been intriguing. For longtime players, the story's introspective nature has reignited discussions about character development and personal narratives. But alongside this deeper storytelling, the gameplay itself has pushed players to rethink how they approach WoW. The War Within introduces a new progression system tied to personal and faction-wide choices, making it the most player-driven expansion yet. Players can now carve out unique paths based on their decisions, leading to more personal investment in their characters and story arcs. This expansion strikes a balance between deep, engaging content for hardcore players and a more flexible experience for those who want to explore it at their own pace. As the expansion's journey unfolds, the War Within has already influenced a shift in mentality for WoW players. Many are returning to the game with a renewed sense of excitement, and there's a sense of rejuvenation in the player base. Whether this expansion will continue to shape WoW's future in a profound way remains to be seen, but one thing is clear: WoW, even after 20 years, continues to evolve both in the content it offers and in the minds of its players. What began as a journey into the unknown has turned into a pursuit of mastery and optimization. But at its core, WoW is still about the experience, the friends we make, the challenges we overcome, and the world we explore. Whether you're a casual player who enjoys the scenery or a hardcore raider pushing for that cutting-edge achievement, one thing remains true: Azeroth continues to captivate us, just as it did 20 years ago. Classic era server clusters are on the rise, and I'm sure you've all heard rumors of a Classic Fresh or a Psalm 2 coming in the near future. But this makes me wonder, why vanilla, and why now? The answer to this is quite simple, yet a little bit complex. I'm going to do my best to explain the situation, but to be honest, this topic will always be an intriguing phenomenon in the WoW community. Let's take a trip down memory lane and try to understand why vanilla WoW will always have a special place in many of our hearts.
In a land of mighty kingdoms, new threats emerge. Ancient alliances are reforged, and an unexplored world awaits. Blizzard Entertainment proudly invites you to experience Warcraft from a whole new perspective. Stake your claim. Live the legend. A world awaits. The world of Warcraft.
World of Warcraft was first released on November 23rd, 2004. Many of us who still play today were in high school at the time or even younger. It truly was a different period in time. There were no smartphones, no YouTube, no Twitch, and everyone ate fruit roll-ups or Dunkaroos as a snack when they got home from school. It was a much simpler time in general. The internet had just started taking off, and the average person spent most of their time online watching Newgrounds videos or downloading music illegally from Kazaa or LimeWire. We of course still played video games back then, but we were playing our GameCubes, Xboxes, and learning how to score with hookers in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. We spent our weekends, Friday nights, and summers playing split-screen Halo on our friends' couches, running around in Blood Gulch blasting each other with rocket launchers. This was the extent of our multiplayer gaming experience at the time. We had a few online multiplayer games at the time, like SOCOM on the PlayStation 2, and of course Halo 2 on the Xbox, but then something changed. World of Warcraft had launched. WoW initially launched at a time when most people had either just convinced their parents to get a home PC, or even built their very first gaming PC. Dial-up internet through AOL at speeds of 34 kilobytes per second was still the most common way to access the internet, and DSL was a huge step above that, coming in at a whopping 861 kilobytes per second. Internet speeds of just 10 megabytes per second were non-existent at the time, so the idea of being able to log into a game where the world was always alive even after you logged off was such a crazy thing for most of us to understand. There were other games that offered this at the time, like EverQuest, but none of them hit the mainstream like World of Warcraft. People began purchasing the game, creating their characters, and logging into the world for the first time. Now keep in mind that this was a time where most add-ons were non-existent, so the world of Azeroth was just one big mystery that players were leveling up in, exploring for the first time. Think back to the first character you ever created in World of Warcraft. Think back to how you felt walking around Elwyn Forest, Mulgore, or Teldrassil in those first few days of playing the game. The sights, the sounds, the enemies, and the mystery around every corner are what started getting people hooked. It was an experience unlike anything that most of us had ever had before. The dopamine rush of leveling up, increasing our character's stats, equipping new armor, and learning new abilities that had new animations tied to them gave you a constant sense of progression and adventure unlike any other. On top of all of this, seeing and interacting with other players who were also on their very own adventure made the game feel truly alive. The game forced you to group up with and communicate with other players to complete elite level quests or to clear dungeons with bosses that yielded powerful loot, like weapons and armor that you would then be able to equip and make your character even stronger while you were out in the world on your adventure to level 60. These first impressions and experiences that we had during our first few months, or even the first year of playing the game, became imprinted in our DNA in some ways. World of Warcraft had become an extension of who most people that played it were at the time, and no one realized in the moment, but the truest form of nostalgia was being created. As players progressed their characters through the various zones while leveling up, they would have experiences with other players or even NPCs that most of them surprisingly still remember to this day, almost 20 years later. Now it's hard to comprehend this, but it's remarkable that people had experiences in a fictional world 20 years ago sitting at their computer in the dark that were so interesting or so exhilarating that they left lasting impressions in their psyche. I'm sure many of you watching this right now can think back to playing the original vanilla version of World of Warcraft and remember something hilarious or interesting that happened while you were drinking your Dr. Pepper or cocaine energy drink while either PvPing or raiding on a Friday night. That leads me into my next segment, raiding. Raiding in Vanilla WoW was truly an amazing concept. You and 39 of your guildmates would hop into voice comms for the night and attempt to clear massive dungeons that were called raids in an attempt to defeat all bosses and receive the highest tier loot available for your characters. These weapons and armor and equipment that these bosses dropped became iconic, because back then, guilds weren't clearing Molten Core in under 1 hour. It took hours and hours, and sometimes multiple nights per week for hours on end. So when you saw a warrior running towards you with Bone Reaper's Edge in your Warsong Gulch, you knew he meant business. Or when you saw a rogue standing near the Stormwind Fountain wearing the full Bloodfang set, you immediately wanted to reroll a rogue, just to be able to look as awesome as they did. Aside from raiding, vanilla World of Warcraft had some of the most satisfying player versus player combat for its time. Sure, it was unbalanced and janky at times, but class fantasy was truly at a high point in this version of the game. If you played a rogue in PvP, you actually felt like an assassin, as you were able to sneak up on cloth-wearing casters and nearly one-shot them with an ambush from the shadows. If you played an arms warrior, you'd be wielding massive two-handed weapons, charging into combat and slamming your enemies around like an unstoppable juggernaut. Or you could choose to play a mage, where you truly felt the power of your elemental magic, hurling massive fireballs and frostbolts at your enemies, all while simultaneously controlling the battlefield with slows, snares, and other crowd control effects. PvP in vanilla World of Warcraft had a certain charm to it, as well as raiding. As time went on, expansions were released for the game. These expansions changed core mechanics and gameplay for certain classes. Some of these changes were good, and some were most definitely bad. At the time of writing this video in 2023, World of Warcraft Dragonflight has recently launched. And if you put Vanilla WoW from 2004 and Dragonflight from 2022 side by side, they are absolutely completely different games. Which is why a few years ago, back in 2019, we received a re-release of Classic WoW. We got to progress through Vanilla WoW once again, which then progressed into the Burning Crusade expansion and now into Wrath of the Lich King. Which leads me to the point of this entire video. Lately, the Classic era realms have been revived, solely by players fiending for the Vanilla WoW experience once again. Enough time has passed since the launch of the Burning Crusade Classic. We played through that entire expansion, and now we're about 35% through the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. People are starting to miss and long for the vanilla universe already, and the reason for this is because with every expansion that comes out, the game changes more and more until it becomes completely unrecognizable. Now there's absolutely nothing wrong with Wrath of the Lich King or Dragonflight, both are decent games. But remember earlier when we talked about those extremely impactful impressions that were left on our psyche? For most of us, those impressions and our nostalgic love for Vanilla WoW will never go away, because it's part of who we are as gamers. Those zones, music, enemies, and gear sets bring us back to a simpler time in life, when we were just kids and had minimal responsibilities compared to what most of us have today. It allows us to escape and go back in a time machine. Even if it's just for a few hours a week, it feels like home. It's comforting, relaxing, and just an all-around fun time in general. Most of us can play a classic fresh over and over again, even though it's been just a few years since the last re-release. I truly believe the desire to play a fresh vanilla WoW will never go away for the majority of players. World of Warcraft has helped many people overcome some serious real-life obstacles and complications. It has helped form real and lasting friendships across the globe and was a massive innovative step in online gaming in general. Hopefully, the rumors are true and we receive a classic fresh sometime soon, so we can once again adventure through Azeroth all the way to level 60, world PvP the entire way there, and then raid Blackwing Lair with 15 Fury Warriors wearing Devilsaur. World of Warcraft is an amazing game for many reasons. You have unmatched world design and freedom, years of incredible development, and a very loud but extremely passionate community surrounding the game. It's a game that has captivated millions since its release in 2004. But beyond its vast world, rich lore, and engaging gameplay, there's something truly magical that has left a lasting impact on its players: the original soundtrack. Today, we're diving into what makes the music of WoW so special and why it continues to resonate with players around the world. From the moment you create your first character and step into Azeroth, the music of World of Warcraft sets the stage. The orchestral arrangements composed by Jason Hayes, Tracy Bush, Derek Duke, and Glenn Stafford immediately immerse you in the world. Whether it's the tranquil notes of Elwyn Forest or the ominous tones of the Undercity, the music is a critical part of the game's identity, a constant that subtly narrates your gameplay and adventure. It keeps you calm or at peace while you're out exploring the world, and provides the atmosphere that cements the very core essence of WoW into each and every player. The soundtrack doesn't just accompany the game, it breathes life into it. It creates an atmosphere that makes every zone, dungeon, and raid feel unique and alive. Each piece of music is crafted to evoke specific emotions, whether it's the sense of danger, adventure, or awe. But the magic of WoW's music goes beyond setting the mood. It tells a story. Each zone's theme reflects its history, culture, and inhabitants. For example, the haunting music of Karazhan tells a tale of a place once full of life, now a twisted ruin haunted by its past. The grand sweeping score of Stormwind embodies the pride and the resilience of the Alliance. These compositions don't just enhance the narrative, they're part of it. They help players feel connected to the world, its struggles, and its triumphs. The music is as much a part of the storytelling as the quests and lore. World of Warcraft's original soundtrack is more than just background music. It's a key element of what makes the game so immersive and memorable. It's a perfect example of how music can elevate a game to something truly special. The music of Elwyn Forest is a masterpiece of atmospheric composition, perfectly capturing the serene beauty and tranquil essence of the zone. The piece features gentle strings, soothing woodwinds, and soft choral elements that evoke a sense of peace and nostalgia. The melody is simple yet deeply evocative, transporting players to a world of lush greenery and quiet, sun-draped groves. This track is more than just background music. It's an integral part of the immersive experience, making Elwyn Forest feel like a living, breathing place. The music's ability to stir emotions and create a strong connection to the game's world what make it so amazing and memorable for players. And then as you step foot into Stormwind for the first time, you're welcomed by a grand and inspiring composition that perfectly embodies the majestic and heroic spirit of the Alliance's capital city. The piece features orchestral arrangements with triumphant brass, soaring strings, and a regal melody that evokes a sense of pride and strength. As players enter the city, the music swells, creating an atmosphere of epic adventure and noble purpose. The track is not just a background score. It's a celebration of the city's rich history and the ideals of honor and justice that Stormwind stands for. The score elevates the player's experience, making them feel like part of something much, much greater. As we travel more north in the Eastern Kingdoms, the music of Ironforge is a majestic and resonant composition that perfectly embodies the stoic strength and enduring spirit of the Dwarven capital. The piece features robust brass, deep percussion, and solemn strings, creating a soundscape that echoes through the vast halls and stone corridors of Ironforge. The music conveys a sense of ancient tradition, resilience, and craftsmanship, reflecting the dwarves' pride in their heritage and their unyielding determination. As players enter the city, the music fills them with a sense of awe and respect for the dwarves' history and culture. The Ironforge music is amazing because it not only complements the grandeur of the city, but also evokes a feeling of belonging and solidarity, making it an integral part of the immersive experience in the WoW universe. As we move to the other side of the world, the music of the Barrens is a striking blend of tribal rhythms, haunting melodies, and ambient soundscapes that perfectly encapsulate the vast, rugged wilderness of the zone. The music features deep drums, eerie wind instruments, and distant animal calls, creating a sense of both solitude and adventure. The track evokes the harshness and untamed beauty of the Barrens, where every step feels like a journey into the unknown. Its minimalist yet powerful composition enhances the feeling of being a lone wanderer in a vast savanna, where danger and discovery are around every corner. This music is amazing because it not only complements the environment, but also deepens the player's connection to the world, making the Barrens feel alive and teeming with hidden treasures. As you journey into the northern section of Durotar, you'll stumble upon a powerful and almost frightening-looking city, Orgrimmar. Orgrimmar has a powerful and primal anthem that perfectly captures the fierce warrior spirit of the Horde's capital. The piece is driven by intense percussion, deep chants, and commanding horns, evoking the raw strength and unyielding determination of the Orcish people. It resonates with the rugged, imposing architecture of the city, creating an atmosphere of both tension and camaraderie. As players enter Orgrimmar, the music fills them with a sense of pride and readiness for battle, embodying the Horde's resilience and honor. This track is amazing because it doesn't just accompany the city, it defines it, turning Orgrimmar into a living, breathing symbol of the Horde's indomitable will. Traveling back across the globe to the Eastern Kingdoms, the Undercity is located beneath the ruins of Lordaeron. It features a haunting and atmospheric composition that perfectly encapsulates the eerie and sinister nature of the Forsaken's capital. The piece is characterized by its ominous strings, ghostly choirs, and unsettling melodies, which evoke a sense of dread and foreboding. The music mirrors the dark, labyrinth-style architecture of Undercity, where shadows lurk around every corner and the air is thick with decay. It immerses players in the somber and tragic history of the Forsaken, adding layers of depth to the city's macabre ambiance. The Undercity's music is amazing because it doesn't just set the tone for the environment, it immerses players in the haunting reality of the Forsaken, making their experience of the city deeply atmospheric and memorable. As we look back on nearly 2 decades of WoW, the music remains a powerful reminder of why we fell in love with this game in the first place. Whether you're a veteran player or someone discovering Azeroth for the first time, the soundtrack will always be there, guiding you through the magic of this beautiful world. The impact of World of Warcraft's music isn't limited to the game itself, it's a cultural phenomenon. From live orchestral performances at BlizzCon to fan-made covers and remixes, the music has transcended the game and become a beloved part of the wider gaming community. Players around the world have connected with this music on a deep level. It has become the soundtrack to their own memories and adventures in Azeroth, and it's no wonder that even years later, the original soundtrack continues to be celebrated and cherished.